Europe has long depended on Russian gas and American LNG to power its homes and industries. But the war in Ukraine, along with sanctions on Russian energy, has thrown a wrench into those plans. Energy prices have skyrocketed, and suddenly Europe's reliance on just a few suppliers looks incredibly risky. So European leaders are now actively looking for new, more reliable energy sources. They are also moving away from those rigid long-term energy contracts, preferring deals that are more flexible and responsive to market changes. One of the most promising solutions, Canadian LNG. Canada has massive natural gas reserves, its infrastructure is growing, and it's a politically stable country. All of these makes Canada a potential key player in the global energy game. This isn't just about Europe getting the energy it needs, it's about reshaping global trade, alliances, and energy security for decades to come. Before we continue, if you find this information valuable, please like this video and share it with your friends. For years, Europe's energy security was built on steady gas supplies from Russia, supplemented by American LNG. But the war in Ukraine, economic sanctions, and volatile prices have destabilized this whole system. While some Russian gas still trickles through pipelines, the dramatic drop in volume has exposed the dangers of over-reliance. Initially, the US stepped in to fill the gap with its LNG exports, but European buyers soon discovered the catch. While US LNG exporters are increasingly offering more flexible contracts tied to spot market prices, the legacy of older, more rigid long-term contracts persists, and European buyers are seeking even greater flexibility. They needed more competitive pricing and more adaptable agreements. This need for diverse suppliers created a huge opportunity for Canada. Unlike Russia, which has a history of political instability and the legacy of the United States' contract-heavy approach, Canada can offer something different: reliable energy, flexible contracts, and shorter shipping routes to Europe's eastern ports, especially if East Coast projects can overcome the hurdles they currently face. Canada's natural gas reserves have always been a valuable asset, mostly flowing south to the United States. But the changing world energy scene is pushing Canada to think bigger, to go global. With significant investments pouring into LNG infrastructure, Canada is rapidly becoming a major contender on the world stage. The LNG Canada project in British Columbia is already up and running, primarily serving the Asian market. This shows that Canada has the capacity to meet global energy demands. And there's growing interest in new LNG export terminals on Canada's east coast in places like Quebec and Nova Scotia. These East Coast locations have a big advantage. They are much closer to Europe than the US Gulf Coast, meaning shorter, cheaper shipping. However, these East Coast projects face significant environmental opposition and regulatory hurdles which need to be addressed before they can be considered a reliable source. Current pipeline capacity limitations on the East Coast also pose a challenge. Pipeline expansions like the tripling of the Trans Mountain Pipeline's capacity show Canada's commitment to improving its energy export capabilities. But more investments in export terminals, storage, and transportation, particularly on the East Coast, is essential if Canada wants to truly capitalize on Europe's changing energy needs. What do you think about Canada's chances in the global energy market? Let us know in the comments below. As Canada boosts its LNG output, it's now a direct competitor not just to the US and Russia, but also to other major players like Australia and Qatar. Australia is already a giant in the LNG export business, vying with Canada for market share, especially in Asia. Qatar, another dominant force, is also known for its low-cost production and long-term deals. And let's not forget the up-and-comers, the emerging exporters in Africa and North America. This fierce competition is good news for buyers because it helps keep prices down and encourages more flexible contracts. Canadian LNG has the potential to help Europe diversify its energy sources while also offering competitive prices and flexibility. While Europe is a key target, Canada has its sights set to Asia too. China's booming industries and growing energy appetite make it a prime customer for Canadian LNG. By diversifying its gas imports, China could forge long-term trade partnership with Canada, guaranteeing a steady demand for Canadian LNG. Emerging markets in India and Southeast Asia are also seeing a surge in energy demand, making them attractive markets. This diversification strategy will help Canada avoid becoming too reliant on any single region, making its LNG industry more resilient and adaptable. The expansion of Canadian LNG is causing ripples across global trade routes. Canada's location on both the Pacific and Atlantic coasts give it two major shipping lanes. The Pacific Corridor connects Canada's western ports to Asia, while the Atlantic Corridor links the East Coast to Europe. Both routes offer cost-effective and reliable shipping options, reducing both travel time and expenses. The growth of Canadian LNG exports is also driving investment in port infrastructure both in Canada and in Europe. Ports are expanding their LNG storages and transportation facilities to handle the increased flow of Canadian gas. Despite the economic potential, Canada faces a tough balancing act, expanding its LNG industry while honoring its climate commitments. Environmental activists are concerned about methane leaks, the impact of fracking, and the long-term effects of building more fossil fuel infrastructure. While LNG burns cleaner than coal, it's not a clean energy source and still contributes to climate change. We have to consider the full life cycle emissions of LNG, including methane. On the other hand, proponents argue that LNG can help the world move away from coal, offering a less polluting options for countries transitioning to cleaner energy sources. Canada's commitment to reducing emissions will need to reconcile with its LNG ambitions. Developing strategies to minimize emissions throughout the entire LNG supply chain will be essential. The rise of Canadian LNG is a major turning point in global energy security and trade. Europe's interest in Canadian LNG signals a fundamental shift in how countries think about energy diversification and stability. If Canada can overcome the regulatory, environmental, and infrastructure challenges, particularly those facing its East Coast projects, it could become a major force in the global LNG market. This could boost Canada's economy and reshape its role in global politics. The future of Canadian LNG depends on navigating the complex intersection of economic, environmental, and geopolitical factors. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our future updates. Thanks for watching.